one of the reasons I write is very much attributed to Jacqueline Wilson. I loved books, but when I discovered her work when I was about 8 years old, I read Sleepovers. I I became a binge reader, and I read everything I could that she'd written within a pretty short space of time. 21 years later, I am still reading her work because I feel like I owe her that much. When her autobiography was released in 2007, I mind blown, to get into the mind of the author who very much played a big role in making me the writer I am today was a fantastic opportunity. I was 15 when it came out. I think I read it a couple of years later because when I was about 14, 15, 16, I stopped reading Jacqueline Wilson because I was, too grown up for that. She says, rolling her eyes. And then I became an adult and realised that actually that's rubbish and I can read it if I want to. Um, I really thoroughly enjoy this. It's very unusual that a book, an autobiography, would be written for a younger audience. But I also have to say that even as a mature reader, it's very engaging. Yes, I feel like all of her books are good to read, but with this one, I feel like even if you're not a fan of her younger fiction, you'd still be able to engage with the tone and find it quite a pleasant read. It's not too juvenile in the vocabulary. I absolutely adored it. Now, Jacqueline Wilson is a very open writer. We have things like the Jacqueline Wilson magazine where she is, very open with her readers about her writing processes, where her ideas come from, what she's getting up to on a daily basis. But at the same time, this is very eye-opening, and I learned at the time quite a bit. For example, I had no idea when I read this that the magazine Jackie was named after Jacqueline Wilson, and it goes into a little bit of detail about that. And obviously illustrated by Nick Sharratt. So I'll read a little bit from Wikipedia, which I think sums up the style of autobiography that you can expect. And this says, the book details her very early life, from babyhood to the summer she was 11, when she's about to start secondary school. The book is interspersed with many photos of the author at that time of her life. She also tells the reader what inspired her to write certain books, and she ends each chapter with a question that the reader must answer. Those questions are about her other books. So it's like, do you remember which book featured such and such a character? So when you've read her books and then you read this, it's kind of a whole interactive journey. And I would love an updated version of this, because it is 14 years old. And I think it would be really interesting, especially now that she's come out as gay or perhaps bisexual. I feel like one of these targeted at adults, maybe addressing some more in-depth topics, would be an absolute dream come true. I don't see it ever happening because it just wouldn't be fair on younger readers for Jacqueline Wilson to have a new book out that they are not old enough to read. That would not be fair on them. But I can still dream. And then obviously it takes us through various stages of her life and what her life was like as she was growing up, and things she loved as a child, things that inspired her. And if I try and find lost my mouth. If I try and find fault with it, I can't. I really can't. It's beautiful. I'm sure there is a fault with it. I'm sure there is something that could have been done differently or could have been done better, maybe the structure of it. But personally, I really liked it. I really adored it, and it's written in Jacqueline Wilson's voice, as most of her books are, but obviously because her narratives are always first person from the perspective of the protagonist, goes without saying. So we always kind of hear her words through the voice of children. But to hear her words through her own voice, with her own stories and her own opinions weaved in, it's special. I have been reading, as I said, Jacqueline Wilson for 21, maybe even 22 years. And this is just so wonderful to, she was the reason I fell in love with reading and writing. To find out why she fell in love with reading and writing, just, it's a magical journey. I absolutely adore it. If you're a fan of Jacqueline Wilson, please read it. I think you'll find it an absolute treasure. Hopefully one day we might get an updated version, maybe detailing some later years or something like that. Obviously, the reason it doesn't detail her more adult life is because it's aimed at children, and they're not going to be able to relate to that. They need to know who Jacqueline Wilson as a child was, because that's what they relate to. But either way, I absolutely love it. I can't fault it. I will read it again, and if you're a fan of her books, absolute must read.